This week on Supercars Torque, I pressed the whiteboard back into action, got another energy drink to try, and James Courtney's left Techno Team Sydney. Product of the week this week, Monster Energy, current supporter of Cam Waters in the Tickford team. I've actually never tried this once, so this will be a bit of an experience. The other day I was reading something. Apparently you need to drink 2 gallons of water to clear Red Bull out of your kidneys, or a can of Red Bull out of your kidneys. Apparently this one you have to drink 20 gallons of water to clear that out of your kidneys. So good luck with this one, kidneys. I'm not too sure what 20 gallons of water is in English, so I'll just get my phone and look that up. Give me a second. Okay, so I've just Googled it. 1 gallon equals 3.705 litres. So apparently, according to this thing that I saw, 20 gallons of water, which is 75 litres to clear that can out of my kidneys. Yeah, so I'm pretty good. I'm drinking 2 to 3 litres a day, so that's going to be about 25 days at 3 litres a day to clear this can. So it better bloody be good. Here we go. Tastes a bit like a medicine. I'm trying to think what, like a cough syrup. So it's got guarana, taurine, ginseng, and inositol. Yeah, so cough syrup. It's delicious. I'll put that a bit further away. I'll put the logo there in case anyone from Monsters watching and wants to sponsor the show with that. That great recommendation for some cough syrup if you want it. So the big talking point this week, Techno Team Sydney, James Courtney's walked and Booster's gone with him. Not a big surprise there, but you know the way Booster's kind of been jumping around. But a little bit surprised that Courtney's kind of pulled the pin after one round. There's a big rumour going around that Courtney hasn't been paid yet. I think if he is the reason that Boost is there, what usually happens with these pay driver roles is that you say you're bringing $1 million to the team. Part of your contract is then I get paid 10% or 20% or, you know. I did hear a rumour once that someone was getting paid 40% of what they were bringing to the team as their wage. So you rock up, you give the team $1 million or whatever and say, you know, say you're at 20% of that. So then the team then pays you $200,000 as your salary for the year so technically you're a paid driver, but you're bringing the sponsors to the team. So I can't see, if Courtney was bringing Boost to the team, I can't see how this not getting paid thing works. I would expect, and being this early in the season, I wouldn't have thought that would have reared its ugly head yet. I think it's probably more to do with the fact that the Techno cars don't get any updates. They're just old shitty cars essentially. And people are saying, oh, it's obvious that Jack LeBrock wasn't the issue last year. Well, yeah, that was clear to anybody all along that the car was well beyond its use-by date, needed some upgrades, and poor Jack was driving a tractor around basically. That's the same car that Chris Pith is in. So essentially, yeah, it's like turning up to a gunfight with a knife. And a pretty spongy one at that. So I thought Courtney was supposed to have a full up-to-date Triple Eight car. It was the car that Triple Eight used for the VCAT aero tests at the start of the year. and that was apparently why there was a delay in them getting the car, because they had to do the extra tests at the start of the year. Who knows, maybe it's still got the diff with the sand in it, and that the special one that they use for the aero testing to make sure that the car doesn't go too fast on the roll down tests. I'm not suggesting anyone does anything dodgy in those aero tests to make the cars appear a bit slower than what they are. But anyway, so Courtney's walked out. We know that. Booster's gone. Booster's going to follow Courtney wherever he goes. So, TCR, anyone? My initial reaction was, I think we're going to see Boost on the side of Chas Mostert's car, and Warren Luff's going to get a, thanks but no thanks. We've got Courtney driving with Chas at the endurance races this year. That's my initial reaction. There isn't many co-driver seats available that haven't been taken yet, so it's not like he can just rock up, somewhere, and he's not going to rock up somewhere competitive. The main seats that are available, funnily enough, are the Techno Team Sydney cars, which brings me to the next thing. Who's going to drive the car in Melbourne? If I can see being Jono Webb, because it can't get any worse. That was Jono's famous line when he replaced Jack LaRock in qualifying at Gold Coast last year, essentially saying, well, Jack's going to qualify the car last, so I may as well go out and qualify last. So off the top of my head, strangely enough as well, then Team Sydney won't have a Sydney driver, essentially, because Pith is from New Zealand. The initial name that popped into my head was Will Brown. He is a Sydney sider, and he's racing for Erebus in the endurance races, but say for Melbourne, he's not doing. Oh, he will be doing Super 2. He'll be doing TCR in Melbourne, so maybe that kills that theory a bit. But yeah, I thought Will Brown would be a good one because he's quick, he's experienced, and I don't think Erebus would say no to him getting more experience as long as it wasn't going to cost them anything. So, and if you don't turn up for a round with a car, you get fairly decent fines. I thought it was $150,000 per car per round that you don't turn up to. Someone was saying that was $300,000, but I think that's $300,000 for the two cars. But the fines add up pretty quickly if you don't show up. It's definitely in your best interest to rock up. So the big question, I suppose, is what's the way forward for this Techno Team Sydney without a lead driver to kind of push it? Because essentially at this point of the year, you're going to get like place fillers. Even if you tried to get a Caruso or someone like that, would they turn around and go, right, well, they might say, well, I can fill in at Simmons Plains and, Wanneroo or something like that. But I don't want to jeopardise my, running with Tickford, for endurance races, to go and, run around the back of the field for the rest of the year. Maybe he could rock up. Richie Stanaway has been mentioned, but I can't see Richie being there without boost money. So it's all a bit up in the air. Jono Webb for the Grand Prix, anyone? The crowds were down in Adelaide. So this year, only 206,000 fans turned up over the 4 days. This is in 2019 there was 254,000, and in 2018 there was 273,000 over the 4 days. So it is a big drop in numbers. Some people are saying it's due to they have a concert on the Sunday night, and in previous years they've had, rubbish like Robbie Williams. I'm trying to think, they probably had like, obviously it wasn't Queen, but what are the ones with the big tongues and the painted faces, and I'm trying to think who they're called. Anyway, it'll come to me. I'm sure they were on the side of the Erebus car at one stage last year. Anyway, they usually have these big headline international shows that they're saying they get at least 30,000 people buying tickets to that who don't even bother to turn up. Like you have an extra 30,000 turn up on the Sunday night after all the racing's gone just to see this concert. So this year the concert was Hilltop Hoods, a South Australian band, quite popular. If I had the choice between, Robbie Williams, which to me is essentially sucking your own penis, or seeing Hilltop Hoods every day of the week. But there is a lot of people out there who, if they could suck their own penis, well, they'd be right on that. So Robbie Williams is and there's also females as well that like someone like Robbie Williams. So if you're a Robbie Williams fan, sorry, but I think, yeah, it is what it is, So there's there's a lot of people who, they'll sign a contract or whatever where that's the only concert that Robbie will come over and do. So you have to go to that if you want to go and, see that kind of thing in concert. Whereas, Hilltop Hoods, you can probably go and see them, not quite your local pub, but, you wouldn't be at a struggle to see them. So, what's the way forward? Because obviously, there's a bit of a trade-off. Like, it costs a lot of money to get these international acts to come out, do the concert. Just thought about it. It was Kiss. They're the ones with the tongues and the painted faces. That's how much I'm right into that music. So I forgot where I was going now. But yeah, basically, do you want to pay X amount of dollars to get that international act there, to get the extra people that just rock up on the Sunday night that don't even bother watching the racing? So you're just getting numbers through the door. You're not actually getting, essentially you're not getting a bump in people actually watching the racing. So, it helps the event as a whole, but it doesn't help the series and that, which Adelaide's a bit different because it is run by the Adelaide government. So, they want to get people to the event and get the numbers up. But, maybe you could just run a solo concert somewhere and, get the same kind of reaction from it. I've read a lot in the last week about the pit stop errors that Triple Eight and Penske had at Adelaide. A lot of people are putting them into the same basket. Now, I can't put them in the same basket because, Penske's one, they held on to the car for an extra second. They had their plan and they stuck to it. They didn't react to what Triple Eight was doing. The Triple Eight one, that was a total fuck up. They did not put enough fuel in the car. It totally screwed Shane Van Gisbergen's race. That was a cock-up of epic proportions, essentially. That lost the race. The Penske one, you could come back from something like that. The Triple Eight one, in this day and age, your lights out. You can't say they both... they both cocked up in the pits, but let's, compare apples with apples. Like, one was a fuck-up, and the other one was a bit of a mistake. I suppose one's like, locking a brake up into a corner, and the other one's, going full pelt straight into the wall. Like, they're not the same mistake. Let's not say that, both of them made, big pit stop errors in Adelaide. That's what I'm trying to get at here. It's not the same, people. Everyone's favourite team principal has come out this week and said that Jeremy Moore, or JJ, is better than Ludo Lacroix. So Roland Dane, the walking quote factory that he is. So for those of you who don't know, Ludo Lacroix was the lead engineer or whatever with Triple Eight, basically from day one when they were in Australia. JJ, Jeremy Moore, he came up through he started off at Larkin Motorsport, went to Triple Eight, worked up. He was Craig Lowndes' engineer for multiple years, and then he went off overseas and worked on the Porsche program. Anyway, they've had a hole in their engineering department since Ludo left to go and join Penske a couple of years ago. And anyway, JJ's come back at the start of the year. He's, had enough of the whole flying around the world thing with Porsche, and he's come back and he's now the head engineer or whatever at Triple Eight. And Roland Dane has come out and said that JJ is leaps and bounds better than Ludo because he's been overseas and you know, he's got that experience with Porsche and that. Well, no shit. Like, you wouldn't, if you just signed this bloke on mega dollars, you're not going to turn around and go, oh, the bloke that left us a few years is better than you, kind of thing, would you? Like, it's, you know, you're not going to turn around and, you know, Walkinshaw this year isn't going to turn around and go, oh, we think James Courtney was a better driver than Chaz Mostert. No, you're going to back Chaz all the way. Same thing here. You're not going to tell your engineers, oh, you know, I think Ludo's better than you. Just, you know, and people like to make comments like this, and then we have a big story about it and people get into a big debate about it. Well, you know, seriously, people, like, what do you reckon? All he's doing is, you know, putting fuel on the fire to try and say we're better than Penske. That's it. Like, he's just trying to rile up Ludo because, you know, there's a bit of bitterness there between the two teams with Ludo leaving. So that's it. Probably what's going to be the biggest topic for the whole year. Thank God it's not parody. What are the Holden teams going to do for next year? So we've got Walkinshaw's come out and said they're not going to race a Holden Commodore next year. Whether that's a debadged Holden Commodore or something, we don't know yet. During the week, MSR and Team 18 have both come out and basically said, we're Triple Eight customers, we're going to follow whatever they do. I'd expect Techno Team Sydney will do whatever Triple Eight's doing, or run this car as long as they can, because that seems to be the game plan. Why change it if you don't have to? So realistically then, you know, so we've got those guys following whatever Triple Eight do. So then the big question is then Erebus and BJR really. So I think you'll probably find that Erebus and Walkinshaw will possibly go down the same line, because Erebus currently buys their engines off Walkinshaw's, and then essentially it's just a body shell that goes over the top. So I'd assume that especially Betty was and Barry Ryan as well have both been vocal about the Camaro, and they'd love to have something that looked a bit cooler for their sponsors. Or if there was a customer engine program in place, say in Braeside at the Kellys, you might even see Erebus change over to Mustangs for next year, because they don't have that kind of brand loyalty as much as what some of the other teams do. Although Holden was tipping in a bit of money, but that's gone now because Holden's out. So could potentially see them switching over. They've got the budget to do it. Brad Jones is a big question. I reckon we'll possibly just see them run out the Commodores, unless Gen 3 happens next year and everyone's got to change everything. Then who knows what direction they're going to go in. But they've got the joy of, they've got to turn over 4 cars as well, whereas teams like Walkinshaw and Erebus have only got to switch over 2. And Triple Eight have, if it is new chassis and things like that, Triple Eight have got the joy of not only their 2 cars, but the 2 at Team 18, the 2 at MSR, and potentially 2 at Techno Team Sydney. So, we might not have answers on this until, February next year on what everyone's doing. So try not to get too wrapped up in it right now. So that's all I wanted to cover this week. I've been drinking a bit of this Monster while I've been stopping and writing stuff on the board. So the more you get a bit used to the flavour, it's not quite as medicinal as what that first sip was. But yeah, anyway, I'll leave it at that. It's about 1,000,000 degrees in the shed today, so you're probably seeing a bit of sweat dripping off my face. I'll have another bit more of this, and until next time, I'll see you later.